Today I want to talk about uprooting bitterness. Uprooting bitterness. Turn to your neighbor and tell him, neighbor, be very careful you don't become a bitter person. Uprooting bitterness. You may be seated. I don't know, but one of the things that I absolutely abhor and hate is crabgrass. I don't know if you've ever seen crabgrass. It has a tendency of growing up in places where it's not wanted. Crabgrass, perhaps you've seen it burst through the concrete and show itself. Maybe a beautiful landscape and lawn. You've seen the beauty of it, but then the beauty of it is beset because of this growth of crabgrass. It comes unwanted, unwelcome, and it comes unexpectedly. That's how bitterness begins to spring up in our lives if we are not careful. It comes unexpectedly. It catches us off guard that sometimes we are hurt by people, situations don't go the way we want them to, and we find ourselves in a bitter place. One thing I've discovered is that you cannot control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it. And we have to make up in our mind that in this life, people are going to hurt us. Stuff is not going to go our way. But I'm not going to allow the things that happen to me mess me up and cause me to have a bitter life where I'm robbed of my joy, of my peace, of my optimism. I refuse to become a bitter person. In fact, this is what the author of Hebrews wants us to understand. The author of Hebrews shares with the believers a number of warnings. He shares with them the superiority of Christ. He tells them Jesus is superior to the priestly systems and sacrifices. Jesus is superior to the angels. Jesus has brought in a new covenant. He tells them don't look back, but to push forward. But then he gives them a warning in this particular chapter. Watch what he says. He says, be very careful that you don't allow bitterness to grow up in your heart, that you're carrying hate from the past hurts you've experienced, because bitterness is just like an unwanted and unwelcome weed that will grow up and spring up in your life that will contort your character, and if you are not careful, completely change you. There are several things I want to share with us as it relates to bitterness, because I know some of us are saying, well, Pastor, I'm a Christian. But even though you are a Christian, you can begin to see bitterness begin to grow up in you. I know you're a believer, but it doesn't mean you're exempt from being bitter. I know you're a Christian, but are you crabby? I know you believe in Jesus Christ, but all of us have a way of being hurt and holding on to that hurt, and it slows us down from moving forward in our lives. So there's several things I want to lift up if we're going to uproot bitterness. Number one, you have to recognize it. Let the church say recognize it. You got to understand, after you have been hurt, that what happens is that a bitter person is usually a person who has been hurt. Maybe life hasn't worked out the way they wanted it to. Someone has offended them. Some even feel as though God has let them down. This has left them bitter on the inside, mad, upset, and angry with others. That hurt turns into anger and hostility. Maybe someone has hurt you intentionally, perhaps unintentionally. Maybe what you've experienced is even imagined. But there's some perceived wrong that you have experienced in your life, and we have a natural response when we've been wronged to retaliate. Some of us have been living our lives waiting to get our lick back. We've been waiting for the right chance, for the right opportunity to get back or get even or settle the score with people that have hurt us. And for some of us, what we've been doing is that we've been nursing the hurt. We've been rehearsing the hurt. We've been nursing the hurt. We've been holding it close to us. We've been petting it up. We've been throwing our own pity parties. We've been sharing stuff that other people have done to us with everybody we come across that we can, because bitter people oftentimes rehearse what has happened to them. But I want to help you on today. At some point in your life, you got to let some stuff go. You got to stop rehearsing the hurt. You got to stop repeating what happened to you. You got to stop spewing out that toxic toxic stuff that has got inside of you, because bitter, like acid, can do more harm to the individual who carries it than on what it is poured out upon. And I wish I had some people on today who can say, yes, there's some stuff that has been done to me that's bad, but I refuse to become a bitter person. I'm going to become a better person. I'm going to take what has happened to me and use it to work for me, because I believe that all things work together for the good. That means the friends who betrayed me. That means that company that let me go without a just cause. That means the deal that fell through because somebody dig ditches. Here's what I've discovered about God. God sometimes allows things to happen to us so that he can do a work through us. And if you would let God use the stuff that happened against you, you would take the lemons of life and make sweet lemonade. Have I got a witness up in this house that knows all things work together for my good? It's all intentional. But bitter people have the problem of letting hate build up in their heart and take a home and live rent-free. Don't let resentment live rent-free. Today is the time to evict it. Don't let hate be stored up and harbored in your heart. You know what bitter people do? Bitter people are fault finders. What happens is, when somebody has wronged you, or there's a perceived wrong, or you've heard something about somebody else. Let me be real careful. This is why you can't listen to what everybody else says about somebody. Why don't you be an objective person who gets to know people for yourself? Because there's some people who will try to change your mind and your opinion to other people. And what bitter people will do, they're fault finders. They look for stuff on people. And if you look at anybody long enough, you'll find something. If you look at the pastor long enough, you'll find something. If you look at the praise team long enough, you'll find. If you're looking for something, you're going to find something. And what bitter people do is that they go into every situation looking for something. See, I knew they was a trip. I knew they was funny. I was expecting them to do that. See, they ain't right. Look at them, because you were looking for something. Matter of fact, why don't you turn the mirror and look at yourself? Because I promise you, with every finger you got pointed out, there's 4 more pointing back at you. And if you would learn to look and examine your own self, you would straighten up your own life. Bitter people make generalizations. What do you mean by that? They say stuff like, all men are dogs. They say stuff like, nobody can be trusted. They say stuff like, see, that's why I stay by myself, girl. I don't mess with nobody. I don't go because people can't be trusted. They make generalizations. Here's what the psalmist said in Psalm chapter 116. He said, I said in my haste, all men are liars. In other words, I jumped the judgments. Those judgments led to conclusions. All men are liars. Bitter people always look for signs to confirm their suspicions of other people. They're fault finders. In fact, watch this. Here it is. If you push somebody's buttons long enough, you'll get them to respond a certain way. Let me give this to you real quick. Have you ever had somebody, people play all type of psychological games. Y'all know there's some people, let me give this to you, who will push your buttons to get a certain response to confirm their suspicions about you. See, look at them. I knew they were. Well, you done pushed my buttons for 5 days. I mean, after a while, pressure causes pipes to burst. That's why you got to be wise enough to read behind the scenes and say, oh, you one of them. You like to play a whole lot of games. I'm not going to fall for the trap. I'm not going to respond the way you want me to. Shoe fly, I refuse to stoop to your level because I read between the lines. You are a miserable person and misery loves company. I refuse to play a part of your petty game. Oh, have I got a witness up in this house? But that's what bitter people do. And also, let me get this to you. Bitter people have what I call bitter body language. Y'all know what bitter body language is like? Bitter body language, here it is. I got this, here it is. They rarely smile. They have watchful eyes, suspicious stares. They make critical, cutting comments. They talk sharply and sarcastically to people. Their responses are never nice. They're unwelcoming, uninviting in their posture. Why? Because they've been bit by the bitter bug and it's turned them into a bitter critter. You got to be careful you don't let the stuff that happens to you get in you. If you got a problem with me, I promise that's going to stay your problem, not mine. Because I ain't got no problem with me. Matter of fact, I appreciate me. Terry, I celebrate me. Fletcher, I should have a good time by myself. If you got a problem, that's just how it's going to stay. Your problem, because I ain't got no issue. I wish I had a witness up in this house. But hold on, here it is. Sometimes it's easy to detect, but then sometimes it's effectively disguised. What do you mean? See, bitterness is an underground sin. That's why we got to be careful fault finding and talking about everybody else, see what they do. Some of the stuff we see other people do, we've always pegged certain sins as the top 3 evil sins. Come on now, I won't name them all off. We got certain sins. See, look at them, they do that, they do that. Well, what about stuff you holding in your heart? Because it's the stuff you got on the inside that can do you more harm than what you can see on the surface. Heart attacks take place on the inside. Aneurysms take place on the insides. Tumors take place on the inside. Cancers eat you from the inside out. And sometimes some of the stuff that people have inside of them cannot be detected on the surface. Here's what sometimes bitterness looks like. It is aloof. It's cool. Standoffish. He says the root of bitterness. Y'all know, you cannot see roots. Roots are hidden, but roots run deep. He says, be careful because bitterness can be at the root, effectively disguised, and some people are good at hiding their bitterness, but the root of their actions stem from the fact that they are bitter. I want to give you 3 points. Here's what it does. Some people will deny it, disguise it, and disregard it. Okay, some people don't always take a person's response as that's truly how they feel. Husbands, y'all better learn that. I want to help you. Don't always take, you got to learn to read the patterns. Let me give y'all some free advice. You got to learn to watch your woman and read the patterns. Have patterns change. It's stuff changing in our relationship. You responding to stuff different. Because sometimes people can be mad, but they're concealing it. Sometimes people can be upset. Sometimes bitterness doesn't always show up in a negative reaction or response. But sometimes you've offended people and they tell you, I'm cool. Yeah, I'm good. You sure you are? No, it ain't bothering me at all. No, I'm straight. Meanwhile, it's stewing on the inside of them. And some people are what we call stuffers. They take one offense after another and they stuff it, but they're sitting there still like a crock pot just simmering. Is stewing on the inside of them. That's why when you see people in a fit of rage and then people have a reporter on them and they'll say, what happened? They were never like that. They were cool, calm, and collected. But there was some stuff brewing on the inside of them. Some people are like silent volcanoes. Just because they haven't erupted yet doesn't mean there's not some hot lava up inside of them. You got to be careful not to be a stuffer. That's why I'm cool and direct to the point with people. I'm not a stuffer. I'm the type of person, I'm real with it. I love to deal with it. Let's sit down. If you got a problem with me, I want good relationships in my church. I want good relationships on my job. I want good relationships in my home. So we're going to sit down and talk about this. We're going to try to reconcile, because I can't even worship God and I got a problem with you. Because how can you worship a God you have not seen and harbor hate in your heart to your brother? No, God said bring that to the altar, set that stuff straight and say, God, if I had sin in my heart, I know you're not going to hear me. So it really ain't even about them. It's about me and you. So if I got to let them go so that I can have a relationship with you, guess what? There's some stuff I got to get over. Sometimes it's easily disguised. Sometimes people, watch this, will act as though things are not bothering them. But not only is it sometimes easy to detect, sometimes it is effectively disguised. Sometimes it evades detection. Sometimes it's hard for us to see ourselves when we're holding on to some stuff in our heart. Joan Lunden in 2014, who was a news anchor on ABC Good Morning, Joan Lunden announced that she had cancer. And she looked healthy, exercised, good shape, but she announced she had cancer. And she had been at the doctor's office before. They'd done scans on her, but then they came back and did an ultrasound. When they did that ultrasound, they discovered, in fact, she had cancer on the inside of her. This cancer was around her breast, building up around her heart. Here it was, some stuff she couldn't see that had built up around her heart. She didn't detect, but she came in, did an ultrasound. They discovered there was some stuff that was wrong with her, building up around her heart. They cut it out and saved her. Had she not been able to see what was on the inside, that cancer would have kept consuming her, grew up in her, and destroyed her life. See, there's some things we can't see on the surface because we seem to be all right, healthy, spiritually, in other directions, in other parts of our lives. But we need the Holy Spirit to do an ultrasound on us, to scan us and show us if perhaps there's some stuff inside of us that could be consuming us. And every time we kneel down and pray, every time we open up the Word, every time we hear the Word preach, it's a chance for us to have God search our hearts and help us recognize the stuff that's wrong with us. So God, when I come to church, it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Not my brother, not my sister. I'm not looking at what's wrong with them. God, I ask you to search my heart. If there's anything in me that's not like you, take it away from me. God, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart, God, let it be acceptable in your sight. And if you find anything that's not, is there anybody in here just want to be right with God, just want God to clean you up? Create in me a clean heart and renew in me a right spirit, oh God. Sometime we need God's word to come and show us ourselves, because it might be some stuff laying dormant in our hearts, some anger, some bitterness, some resentment that's lingering there. And let me give this to you real quick. Some of us, anger, bitterness, resentment is affecting us mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. High blood pressure, hypertension, heart disease, heart attacks, headaches, stress. A lot of this can be traced back to some bitterness, anger, and resentment. Bitterness will devastate you spiritually, destroy you physically, discourage you emotionally, deprive you of blessings, and it will defile your relationships. You got to recognize it. Let the church say recognize it. Not only do you have to recognize it, you got to remove it. Let the church say remove it. He says it's like a root that takes root in your heart. It's like a unwanted weed. This thing has grown up in me that they hurt me. And because they hurt me, I just been holding on to that hurt. I've been dragging it around. I've been rehearsing the hurt. I've been sharing with everybody how they did me wrong, and I can't get them out of my mind. And what it does is Ephesians chapter 4, verse 31 and 32. Let all bitterness, wrath, clamor, evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. Here it is. Bitterness, evil speaking, clamor, all comes from the fact we've been hurt from some. Let me get ahead of myself. See, it's interesting. All of us have a way of playing the victim. Yeah, we the victim. We the victim in every situation. We the victim. You forget sometimes you was the victimizer. Okay, y'all ain't gonna help me. You've been hurt. Yeah, I know that. But there's some people you've hurt. There's some people you lied to. There's some people whose trust you betrayed. There's some people you fell down with. There's some people that you didn't keep your promises to. I know, just think long enough back over your life. There's somebody you disappointed, somebody you did wrong. And since you have been forgiven by God, you got to learn to forgive other people and stop dragging around what everybody else did to you. Why don't you learn to look at what you did to some other people? Because God said, I can't forgive you if you don't forgive them. So So if you need God to let you off the hook sometime like I do, you need to let some other people off the hook. If you need God to give you the benefit of the doubt sometime like I do, you need to extend that same mercy to somebody else. If you need God to give you grace like I do, you need to show some grace to some other people. If you need God every day, I need new mercy. I need brand new grace. I need God to give me a clean slate. I need God to give me another chance. I need God to overlook my faults. I need God to overlook my offenses. And so God says, I need you to do that every day. Guess what? I can release some other people. I refuse to hold on to what they did from this day forward. I'm letting some stuff go. Have I got a witness up in this house? Touch somebody and tell them it ain't worth it. It's not going to move you forward. You keep dragging that around. You keep holding to what they did. Why don't you get over the grudge and let them go?